Representing GBI Kaita Federal Constituency, Mr. Speaker, I'm from Katsina State. Mr. Speaker, we are today discussing the general principles and the merits of this bill tagged Tax Administration Bill 1756 HB. Mr. Speaker, this bill undoubtedly will enhance efficiency, ensure compliance, and harmonize tax collection within the 3 tiers of government. However, there are several inconsistencies and challenges this tax bill may pose in the tax administration of this country. And I believe the committee that will be charged with the responsibility of addressing some of the issues will definitely look at some of the issues that I will raise on this floor today. Some of these challenges, there is constitutional and jurisdictional concerns, particularly in section 141, which deals with supremacy clause, which contradicts some of the positions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Then there is the issue of overlap and on the existing laws, particularly Personal Income Tax Act, Company Income Tax Act, and the FRS Tax Act. There is some existing conflict that this bill may cause, which I believe the committee will definitely look at these issues. However, also there is the issue of fairness, practicability, and reasonability. How reasonable will this law be? Because law must be reasonable, must be fair, because they are going to govern human beings. There is the issue, or practical issue, of this law in section 122, in section 95 to section 119. Mr. Speaker, when we look at the tax, the VAT issue, the fiscalization issue, fiscalization clearly is about technology. How prepared are we to achieve that? So there is the concern of burdening the taxpayers. Then also there may be some level of exclusion where technology cannot reach. So it's a concern that should also be looked at by this assembly.
Honorable Sada Soli, 2 minutes more.
Mr. Speaker, there is administrative and operational issues. There is ambiguity. There is preponderance of ambiguity in this act because of the absence of interpretation clause. The interpretation clause is not robust, did not address the issue of derivation. What is derivation in this act? What does it mean? It needs to be defined so that it will be interpreted correctly, so that it will be applied with the section that it is talking about. There is the issue of artificial transaction. What is artificial transactions? There is the issue of tax planning. We need to interpret it correctly. There is the issue of tax supply. We need to interpret all these words because they have great impact.
With due respect, Honorable Sada Soli, time up, sir.
Mr. Chair.
Honorable Sada, please, just round up, please. Try to round up as quickly as possible.
Mr. Speaker, there is the concern of equity in section 77, where it talks about 60% of derivation to states. There is the need for the committee to address the issue, to look at the equity of states that are less in competition with other stronger states in the country. Mr. Speaker, because of time, I will yield my time to other speakers.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sada.
82 not yet recovered Chibok girls from a ravaged northeast sub-region. Mr. Speaker, because of paucity of time, I will equally expedite by relying on the submission of Sada Soli Jibia on the provision of Section 141, subsection 1, that contradicts the provision that stand the supremacy of the Nigerian Constitution. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, we are all aware that essence and the purpose of every government is the welfare of its citizens. And whenever this welfare is not fairly or evenly distributed, that is going to cause chaos and is going to defeat the purpose of which government is established. I'm going to speak on clause 77 of the bill as submitted by the executive, which stipulates the vertical distribution to be 10% to the federal government, 55% to the state government, and 35% to the local government, while the horizontal distribution should be 20% based on population, 20% based on equity, and 60% based on derivation. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, governors' forums and other stakeholders have made their submission. I am a bit different from their position, particularly in the area of derivation. As earlier said, derivation is not clearly written or explained or stated whether it's a consumption derivation they mean or they mean generation derivation.
2 minutes more, please.
No, I have, thank you so much for adding me 2 minutes. Now I have 3 minutes, 14 seconds. So what I'm trying to say in a nutshell is they have not stated clearly whether they mean by consumption derivation or derivation based on generation. In as much as their position is consumption derivation, I equally have a reservation on inability or failure on the FIRS to provide the required infrastructure and the technology to track consumption in each and every location of the country.
Time up.
You cannot give me 2 minutes and retrieve it again. Everybody is a testimony here. So what I'm trying to say in a nutshell, I still have 2 minutes, 10 seconds. What I'm trying to say in a nutshell, you are distracting me, I will add 2 minutes. What I'm trying to say in a nutshell, there must be clear definition of derivation as far as the governance forum position is concerned. If they don't have the technology to track consumption, and they mean the 30% is derivation based on generation, where the 30% of the VAT collected is going to be released to the areas where these companies are headquartered, I have a reservation. That is another thing. Secondly, on the issue of increasing the VAT, we are all on the same page that VAT should not be increased. But let us use the advantage in this reform to increase collection efficiency from 20% to at least 70% as is obtained in other African countries of the world. Absolutely. Lastly, I want to use this opportunity to correct the impression that minimum wage earners are not going to be taxed because their income is not up to 800,000. By my calculation and a simple arithmetic, my calculation is 70,000 naira being a minimum wage times 12 months is 840,000. In other words, that particular threshold should be increased to either 900,000 or something above that. Lastly, okay, it's corrected. Then lastly, on the issue of family income tax.
Bawo, please.
Yes, I will conclude. He was the one that gave me additional 2 minutes. I'm trying to exercise my right. What I'm trying to say in a nutshell is the family income tax should be clearly defined and identify what are taxable as far as family income is concerned. And the inheritance clause must be clearly written for every Nigerian to see that inheritance should not, at whatever level of influence, be part and parcel of taxes to be deducted when and wherever the need arises. I thank you very much for listening. I thank the leadership for taking a diplomatic approach to solve this problem. And we are in support of this bill to pass the second reading so that during the public hearing, each and every stakeholder will be allowed to put in their best. Thank you.
Thank you.
When the interest of our people out there is at stake, Mr. Speaker, I am proud that for the first time in my history of being a parliamentarian of over 33 years in the floor of this House of Representatives, I have seen under your leadership, and by extension the leadership of the other body of principal officers, a strategy that put on hold an executive bill, only one bill, executive bills that came with all the speed to this House of Representatives. On hold because you said, hold it until we consult. Hold it and let us dialogue. Hold it and let us discuss the interests and the expectations of the common man on the street whom we are representing on this floor. Mr. Speaker, I want to believe that by now every member of this House has consulted widely. I have consulted. Every good member of this House has also dialogued. Pieces of legislation with an informed mind, and definitely with a mind of committing to the expectations of my people. I believe, based on these consultations, Mr. Speaker, and dialogue, the members of the House of Representatives today, individually and collectively, are able now to differentiate and identify the bathwater and the baby. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, today, I believe we are all informed. We can be able to differentiate between the chips and the rice. And so also in your wisdom, Mr. Speaker, and the wisdom of the leadership, the first time you are coming up with a strategy that came up with a special committee, a reviewed committee to go into the business of this legislation so that each and every state will have a representation on the finance committee that has the statutory duties to actually conduct the public hearing. Members of the caucuses that are providing shock absorption policy and administration here are also members of this adjusted committee, a large committee. It is all with a view to ensuring that what the people expect from us is what will be embedded in this legislation at the end of the day. This, of course, would not have been possible, Mr. Speaker, if the executive arm of government, led by the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, distinguished Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, had also not graciously allowed us to practice democracy in the real sense. I salute Mr. President for allowing us to do our job in our own way. I salute Mr. President for not interfering.
Dogo, 1 minute.
And when he said so, our spokesman, the linkman, my linkman to my governor is Honorable Madaki and Honorable Kabiru Rurum, and they have told me that my governor is on the same page. So I want to say, with all sense of commitment, that this House and honorable members that are seated here, we should allow this bill to go for second reading. And like my colleague has said, at that point, we will be able to actually tidy up. And we hereby promise Nigerians that the best will come out of the bill in the larger interest of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to guide us, and may God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Mr. Speaker, put the question, please.
Thank you.
Federal constituency. I'm from Kano State. Mr. Speaker, I stand to contribute to the 2024 proposed tax reform bills debate. Mr. Speaker, as you are rightly aware, the 2024 proposed tax reform bills have elicited responses from several quarters. While the reforms had its merit, the following provisions have made Nigerians, particularly my constituents, apprehensive about it. Permit me to discuss just a few. The reform proposes a gradual increase in VAT rates from 7.5% to 10% effective January 2025, 12.5% by January 2026, and 15% by 2030. This gradual increment could increase the cost of building materials and other goods, which the average Nigerians will ultimately bear. The proposed tax reform can widen economic disparities and the existing inequalities, given that certain regions will benefit more than others from the changes. For example, states that receive more VAT than they contribute might face challenges under the new allocation model. As per provision of Section 59 of the NTB, Agencies like TED Fund will have 0% funding from development levy by 2030, and NIDA, NASENI suffer the same fate by 2027. Yet, there has been no explicit mention of where these agencies will get their future funding. Anything that affects the functioning of these agencies constitutes a great danger to the state of our tertiary education, information technology, science and technology, and innovation in Nigeria. The bills propose granting the president sweeping discretionary powers, which have often been abused and may not be helpful for the country's health. In light of the above, and considering the resentment these provisions have elicited from my constituents and other concerned Nigerians,
Honorable Hassan.
I find it extremely
Honorable
difficult
Hassan.
to support these bills unless these
Time up,
areas
please.
are amended
Time up, please.
to address the concern raised by Nigerians. Honorable Mr. Speaker, I so submit.
Thank you, my brother. The next to